Hello everyone, it's Elsie here from the customer care team, and today we're looking at the bulk receipting tool, which you can find in the fundraising section of Keela under this brand new tab here called Receipts. So as soon as you navigate here, you'll see that there are three different sections of the Receipts tab here. We've got Unreceipted Transactions, Approved Transactions, and Receipt Groups. So when it comes to receipt compliance, it's really important to ensure that we've crossed all of your T's and we've dotted your I's, and everything's been checked. So we've designed this bulk receipting tool in a way that will do that check process for you. It's sort of built into it. And that's where these three stages come into play. So each one of them represents a step in that approval process. And I'll go through each section in detail. Let's start with unreceipted transactions. That's the first step. So here you'll be able to approve donation transactions for bulk receipts, and you can also ignore those that aren't eligible. So you can choose from either your current fiscal year or the previous fiscal year. It's completely up to you. I'm going to stick with current fiscal year, which is the year that I'm in now. So if you're looking, for example, if you're logging your receipts in January for the previous year, just make sure you switch to previous fiscal year. But all my data in my test system is for the 2021, so I'm going to be looking at it like this. So here you'll see a list of all transactions from the current fiscal year, so from this year, that have not received a receipt already or have not had a receipt created for them already. They're unreceipted. So before you can issue bulk receipts for these donations, you'll need to approve them. You'll need to tell the Keela system that, yep, these are definitely eligible for a bulk receipt. Let's check them out. Let's move forward with that process. So there are a couple of reasons why a donation might not be eligible. So you might these ones you'll know off the top of your head, or you'll be able to check with your accountant or tax professional, who'll know all the specifics that apply to you. But some examples might be if goods and services were exchanged for the entire amount of the donation, or if the donor doesn't have a mailing address in Keela, and that's something that's required on your receipts. I know that for Canada, a mailing address is required by the CRA to be put on receipts, so that could be a reason. If you know that you've already issued a receipt for it somewhere else, whether it's in Keela or without it, obviously you can't issue more than one receipt for a donation. So if you've already created a receipt for a donation, it won't appear on this list because you want to make sure that you don't accidentally issue multiple receipts. So if you do want to include a donation in the bulk receipting process that's already had a receipt issued for it, you can cancel that receipt and reissue a new one here. So those are just some examples off the top of my head, but definitely speak to your tax professional if you want to double check any of these. Okay, so when you're in the unreceipted transactions section, you've got a search bar over here, which you can use to search for specific contacts. So I can look for Wilma up here and just remove it. It'll automatically filter and unfilter. Speaking of filters, you do have this filters button here. You'll recognize it as being something that's scattered throughout the Keela system. And here you can sort of apply any filters to the list, which can help you kind of narrow the list down if you're wanting to do really specific checks. So you can use that filter tool there. Over here, we've got the selecting tick boxes that you can use to select one donation at a time or multiple donations. And then here, this black arrow, you'll also recognize from throughout Keela. If you click on this, you can select all the donations on this page, select all donations on all pages, so select every single donation, and you can also deselect all as well from there. When you've selected a couple of donations, you'll get this action button here where you can either approve these donations for a bulk receipt, so move them to the next stage, tick them off and say, yes, these can receive bulk receipts. And you can also mark as ignored as well, so you can remove them from this list completely. The last sort of thing to be aware of in the structure of this is we have a preview button here that lets you preview sort of the receipt and the donation and the receipt information that's on it. So that's what the preview button there does. And you can also sort the columns by date received and total amount. So that's the basic structure of the unreceipted transactions screen, and this structure is repeated throughout all three of the screens. All right, now that we've kind of gotten an idea of how everything's looking, let's get to actually using this screen. I think that my advice for beginning the unreceipted transactions process, this step one, is to start by first ignoring any donations in this list or removing any donations from this list that you know aren't eligible. So that way you can just remove the ones that aren't. There probably won't be many, or it's more likely that you'll have less that need to be ignored from this screen than need to be approved. So start there, and then at the end you can just bulk approve all the receipts. Of course, if you know straight off the bat that all of the donations in your list are eligible for a bulk receipt, then fine, you can skip this part, the ignoring of donations, because you can just go straight ahead to the bulk approval process, which I'll show after this. But for those of you who know that there are a couple in here who shouldn't receive a receipt or shouldn't receive a bulk receipt, this is sort of how you can work that out. So I tend to use the search bar and the filters tool to do the heavy lifting for this part. Instead of going through every single transaction, I sort of try to think of things that these donations that I want to ignore have in common, and then using Keela to narrow down the list. So for example, if you go to the filters tool here, we've got all these different inbuilt filters that you can narrow down your list by. I recommend if you're not sure which one is going to work for you, then just check the list of filters. And this applies to anywhere in Keela. If you're sort of not sure what filters you need or what filters are there, you can just come in and you can expand them and check each one and use some critical thinking to kind of decipher what that information is and how it's going to be useful for you. So, for example, payment method could be a good one. Perhaps you know that any cash donations that are received already have had receipts issued for them, at your fundraiser or at your event. So you could filter by that. And you could ignore all of the donations that are on that list. So that's a really good one. But there's a bunch of others. Just come in here and take a look at all the little filters that are available and do some playing around. I think you'll really find that's the best way to learn. Otherwise, we've got training videos on how to use filters and some frequently requested filter articles that I'll show at the end of this that you can use to sort of find what everyone else is using in terms of filters. So skip to the end if you want to check that out. Let's say in my scenario, in my test organization, I know that any donations that were received from a company aren't eligible for donations. So that's just something specific with the way my organization works. Perhaps they receive goods and services in return if they're a company. But I'm going to use that, the fact that donations came from companies, as a way to filter my list. So I'm going to search for contact type. Here it is. And I'm going to filter the list so that only contacts who have a contact type that contains any of, and I'll just put company, so only those folks who have a contact type of company will remain. Brilliant. So I've got two donations straight off the bat that I can ignore. So I can either click on this drop down and select this page, which will automatically select all the donations on this page, which is really useful if you've got, sort of 10, or I can just select them one by one. So if you've got a bunch of donations on the page, I recommend using the select this page option. But either way, I've got them selected. The next step is to click on the actions button and mark these as ignored. I want to remove them from the entire unreceipted transactions list so that there's no danger of me accidentally approving them or anything like that. I want to get them out of the way, get them out of my hair and start kind of clean. So I'll mark them as ignored. Then they'll be removed. So if you come in here and just remove your filter, everything's updated, but we are sans 2 donations in here. So that's sort of my first step. Another sort of criteria that I can use to ignore donations would be the amount. So I can see here we've got a couple of contacts who have donations of $2 or less, and perhaps I don't want to issue a receipt for these folks. Maybe they're not large enough to be eligible for a receipt if that's sort of your country's compliance rules. It's up to you. I just want to show you an example. So if I click on filters, what I can do is filter by the amount of the donation. So I'll type amount and select total amount. And I'm just going to go is between, and I'll say is between 1 and 2 maybe, or you could make it $5 if you wanted it to be no donation receipts for $5 or less. Let's try that. Filter there, and so I'll be left with 38 unreceipted transactions, so 38 donations that match that criteria. So maybe I just want to ignore them, so I'll select all pages, which selects every donation in the list across all pages, and maybe I just want to mark them as ignored. Alrighty, so now that I've removed any ineligible donations from my list, let's get approving. Maybe since I'm new at this, I might want to just start out by approving a couple of donations one by one. So let's say I have a donor named Wilma Flintstone. I'm going to search for Wilma here. Whoop. And I'm really comfortable with Wilma's donations. I know her well. She's my contact. I'm her go-to representative at this organization. So I know that these are a good place for me to start. So I can select these one by one. I'm just going to select a few, just like that. So whenever you see a donation on the list, you can click that little tick icon and it'll select it. I'm going to click on the Actions button and I'm going to approve them for a bulk receipt. So it's just going to move them to the next section. If I want, I can select this page. I can do the same for the rest, and it'll just remove them onto that next section there. Once I'm done, I can remove the search, and I'm back to my list, feeling good. The first sort of go at it has been successful. Okay, so now that I've ignored every transaction that I need to, I've tested this out with Wilma's donations. I'm feeling really comfortable. I can just go ahead and accept all. So I'm going to select all pages, which selects every transaction, and just click approve for a bulk receipt, and we'll see what happens. Bum, bum, bum. So 5 of my contacts need to be updated before their receipts can be generated. Click on preview to edit the contact. So you can see that about 400 of the transactions were approved automatically, but it looks like I've just got 5 contacts here whose transactions are holding up the show. So as per the error, let's hover over here and click preview and we'll see what's going on. So straight away I can see that there's missing required information. So I can see that we're missing a receipt full address, and my organisation settings are from Canada, and mailing address is required by the CRA here in Canada as a required field. So if you find that you get the same error here, most likely because of that. So what I can do here is, if I know the address off by heart, so I can, or off the bat, I already know it, I can edit receipt info from here. Let's say Pavestone Court, save. And so then the receipt info will be updated automatically, and that specific transaction I was looking at will be automatically approved. But I know I can just go through and select all of Fred's, actually it might be easier if all of Fred's donations now. So I'll select all and I'll approve them. So that's one sort of the first way that we do some checks for you automatically. Now, perhaps I want to try Mary Poppins. Let's give Mary Poppins a go. Edit receipt info. Say Andrews in Texas. We'll say in Los Angeles. I doubt Mary Poppins has been to Los Angeles, but now we've updated that and that transaction has been approved automatically. But again, I can just select these and approve them, and they'll go through. And then perhaps I don't have everybody else's address at the moment, so I might not have Scooby-Doo's or Harry Potter's. So maybe I will just choose to either ignore them or I can leave them. I can move on to the next step and keep these transactions in here. Maybe I can come back to them at a later step. So let's jump into step 2, approved transactions. So this is the next option in that drop-down menu. And you guessed it, this is where all of those transactions that you've just approved are moved to next. So now that you've approved your donations for a bulk receipt, the approved transaction section over here is the place to be. This is where the magic happens. So from here, we're going to be creating the receipts from multiple donors at once, kind of creating a bulk receipt for them. And from here, you can either email them out automatically, so just create them and send them, or if you know that some folks need to receive these bulk receipts via mail, here's where you can create them and then set up the process to download them so that you can print them out from your computer. And again, you'll see much of the same kind of functionality. You can switch from current to previous year here. You've got your search bar, filters, and all of the sort of selecting options here. Okay, let's take a look. So maybe I'm here and now I want to just see how it kind of works. I just want to start with a single donor and work my way up from there. So perhaps we looked at Wilma Flintstone last time. Maybe I want to look at Fred this time. So I can search for Fred here. It narrows down the list and I can select all of the donations on this page. I want them all to be included in this bulk receipt that I'm going to be sending to Fred. Next, I click on Actions, and from here I can issue receipts from the selection. So everything I've selected now will be included on that receipt. I can also mark as ignored from here as well. So if there was someone you missed in the previous screen, not to worry, you can always mark as ignored from here. So I'm issuing receipts from selection. Let's go with that. So this little pop-up window will appear and here's where you're going to sort of be telling Keela what sort of receipts you want to be creating and just setting out some customization to keep track of it. So the first thing you'll see is receipt group name internal. And as its name would suggest, this is sort of an internal label that you can apply to the group of donations that you're bulk issuing receipts for. So this will be really handy if you're doing a bunch of different receipts from a bunch of different people at one time. It sort of helps you keep track of that, maybe let your colleagues know which receipt group this is, just sort of for internal tracking purposes. So let's say, for example, I need my team members to know that I'm issuing receipts. So I'll say it's Elsie's receipts. Today's a Monday, so we're doing it on Monday. The delivery method for this, there are a couple of different options. You've got email. So once I'm finished this process, if I select email, then the receipts that I've sort of produced will be automatically emailed to all of the donors. So in this case, it's only Fred. So a receipt will be emailed to Fred. I can also print and mail them, which means that Keela will create a folder of donations and donation thank you letters for you to download to your computer, and then you can just print them from there. They'll be in PDF format. The last option is just none. This is a PDF only. So this option is for if you don't need thank you letters, if you just need only the receipts, perhaps for accounting purposes or keeping them on file. If you need to keep just a copy of receipts on file in your filing cabinet, then you can just select this one and only the receipt will be produced. So you won't get that thank you letter as well. I'll show you what I mean once we produce the receipt. You'll see the difference. But in this case, I want to email out this receipt to Fred, so I'm going to select email. Next is the receipt format for money transactions. So for all of those dollar donations that we've received, any kind of funds, you can choose to have one receipt per donation, or you can also choose to have a cumulative receipt produced per donor. So I think this will be the most popular one, the cumulative receipt, because what this means is that all of these different transactions, all of these donations from Fred, will be combined into a single receipt. So a really good option for folks who've done multiple donations. It keeps everything kind of nice and neat. So the donation receipt will have the total amount that was donated, the year, and the different transaction IDs for the donations. So all of the information that you need to be compliant. We only include the transaction IDs for each individual donation because we need it for compliant receipts, but also to keep everything nice and small. We want it to be on a single page wherever we can. So we don't want too much information on there. We don't want to make you have to sort of print out or email out multiple pages where we can. So cumulative receipt per donor, that's the one you want if you're wanting to produce a single donation receipt for multiple donations. The last one is receipt format for non-money transactions. So in order to be compliant, any transactions that aren't money, so things like securities, gift in kind donations, those need to have a single receipt for them. They can't be put into a cumulative receipt with money transactions. So we've just got this option here to remind you of that. That you only have the option of one receipt per donation for those kind of non-money transactions. So we put it in here to keep you compliant, and B, to remind you that that's the case, just so you don't get a surprise when you have multiple donations receipts produced for different kinds. All right, moving on. So everything's looking good. We'll go next. So now I just get a summary of everything so I can double check it all before I save it and confirm and send. So recipients ready, it lets us know how many people are included in it. So of course it's just Fred, we've got the one here. Recipients missing information, I'm going to go over that next. So ignore that for the moment. Spoiler alert, we'll get to that in the next scenario. Transactions is the number of donations that are included. So I've only got 8 for Fred, but really handy when you're looking at multiple donors because you'll be able to see how many people are included, and this will probably be a higher number. Again, a reminder of the group name you put and just all of the other details that you have on this. Okay, everything's looking good. I'm comfortable with that. I'm going to click Save. So my receipt group is being processed. I can continue working while I'm at it. Maybe I want to remove this search and continue on approving sending receipts. But I want to show you where it went. So Fred's donations have been removed from this screen. Where did they go? You guessed it, they went to the last section of this tab, the receipt groups. So I'll jump in here. And this is where that label, that receipt groups label, really comes into play, because you can see here's Elsie's receipts from Monday. They were sent 25th of January, email delivery, and they have been sent. So because it was only one donor, they've been sent out pretty quick. But if you have a big long list, this will say processing. It might take a couple of minutes. But usually it's sent within the next couple of minutes, or it can be up to sort of half an hour, depending on how many you've got. But I'm going to jump in here and show you kind of how you can use this to keep track of stuff. So let's click on it. In here, you can see all the transactions that were included, the date that the donation was received, the amount, the receipt number. Of course, the receipt number is the same for all of these because remember, I chose cumulative receipt. So I chose to only include one, and they've been delivered. So if you want, you can also download all of these from here. If you want to keep copies of these on your computer in PDF format, you can download them from here. We'll look at that a little bit in the next scenario. So that's sort of what it looks like. This is how you can keep track of it. And if I go back, I can see all of my other receipt groups. I can see Laura's been working on some a couple of weeks ago. We've got The Simpsons. So it helps you kind of keep track of that. So this time, what I want to do is just send out multiple receipts at once for different donors. So I'm just going to select all of the donations that are on this page. So these 20 donations here. Again, actions, issue receipts from selection. And I'm going to call this page 1 because I'm not very imaginative, as you'll know from my other training videos. Page 1, email, let's call it that. Again, delivery method is email. I want cumulative receipt per donor, and I'm going to select next. Bum, bum, bum. Oh no, 3 transactions do not have the required information to continue. So I've got 2 options here. I can look at these transactions, see what's going on, see what information is missing and potentially update it, or I can just skip these and send to the remaining contacts. So let's try adding the missing information first. So straight away I can see that I've been taken to this little module. I'll be able to update the missing information from here. I can also see how many contacts there are and what number I'm up to. So I'm looking at Forrest Gump, who is 1 of 3. So since it's only 3 contacts, I'm pretty happy to go through them right now. But if you saw that it was 100 or something like that, then I recommend cancelling and going back, because you might want to consider a different delivery method, or perhaps updating these contacts in bulk, because 100 contacts is going to be a lot to go through. But I'll let you know, that the information that is missing is an email address. So what's happened here, if I go back, if ever I select the email delivery method, and if there is a donor within that list of transactions that you've selected and they don't have an email address, Keela will let you know with this module. So spoiler alert, that's what's happening here. So Forrest, I can see Forrest is missing an email address. Of course, we can't email a receipt to Forrest if Forrest doesn't have an address. So if you want, you can just go back. If you don't know, if there's 100 contacts and you don't want to go through each one, or you're not sure what Forrest Gump's email address is, you can always cancel and go back and then decide to skip these contacts. And we'll send out the receipts for all of the other donors, and these will just stay in your list so you can come back to them later as well. It's up to you. But I happen to have Forrest's email address on hand, so I'll paste it in there and we'll go next. This time we've got King Kong. So let's try King Kong in here. And who's last? Rocky Balboa. I'm sending out a receipt to Adrian, but I guess I'm missing Rocky. All right, we'll go next. And then again, just the same thing. You have the summary here. You can save it and it'll get sent. So not everyone has an email address, right? And we want to make sure that you have all the tools you need to be able to print and mail out receipts to those folks. So you can just chuck them into an envelope and then get them sent out. So in this scenario, if you have a bunch of contacts that you know who don't have an email address or who prefer to receive their receipts via mail, I recommend using filters to sort of do the heavy work for that, to sort those contacts out. And then you can create a receipt group especially for them as well to help with keeping track. So let's look at filters. I'm going to filter by primary email address. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the filter logic to be is empty. So I'm looking at those contacts where the primary email address field is empty. Let's take a look. Okay, so I've got 38 transactions, a couple of different contacts in here. So these are my special snail mailers. So I'll just select all pages. So that's going to select all of the donations across multiple pages. I'll make sure everyone's included. We'll go actions, issue receipts from selection, call them my snail mailers. They're my special favorites. We'll change that delivery method to print and mail, and we'll go next. Uh-oh, 11 transactions do not have the required information to continue. So in that case, if I take a look, I can see that we're missing the full address. So if you do print out these donations, you'll be able to use the receipt, the mailing address that's on the receipt, to put them into a windowed envelope and send them out. So we let you know if you're missing a full address. But I don't know Daffy Duck's mailing address, to be honest, so I'm just going to cancel. And I'm just going to skip and issue the receipts to the remaining contacts. I'll come back to Daffy later. So I've got 3 recipients included and I've got 1 recipient missing information. So that's that bit of information we skipped before. So Daffy Duck doesn't have the required information. So we've only got 27 transactions instead of that 38 that we started out with. So I'll click save though. That's brilliant. I can come back and see how Daffy Duck has been left there. So no matter what, you can always come back later. So at the end, you might find that you've just got a list of donations that you can't either email out because you don't have a primary email address, or you can't mail them out because you don't have a mailing address, and you can always just come back to these later. So I might do that. I'll remove this filter, get back to the approved transactions list, and I just want to go check and see how my snail mailers is coming on. So I can see it's still processing. We're still compiling the receipts together. But I can come in here and take a look at who was included. We've got Goofy, Sherlock Holmes. And once this is processed, it'll come up with delivered here as the delivered status, and I'll be able to download them all from here. But while I'm waiting for that, I'll pause this training video for you so you don't have to wait with me. Okay, so the snail mailers group is done. The status is receipted. So we'll jump in here. I can see that they've all been receipted and that a receipt has been produced for them, and I can download them all from here. So let's take a look at that. So it'll download as a zip file. Pop up down here, I'll open it up. Wait for it to load on my computer. And here it is. So I've got the receipt and the receipt letter as well produced in here. If I open up the letter, you can see that the name and address is in here. So you can just fold that up and pop it into a receipted envelope, a windowed envelope as well. So you don't need to handwrite the receipt addresses. If you want. Sometimes folks like doing that, and I think it can be a really nice personal touch. So if you've only got a couple, you can write them, but it's good if you've got hundreds and hundreds of receipts to mail. The message that appears on the receipt here is the same message that you set up in your organization settings. I'll just show you the receipt itself. So all of this information will show up in your organization settings as well. You can adjust it there. Now, one thing to note, if I jump out of this, is that you can find that in here. So we'll jump into organization settings, go to receipt and emails, and here's where you can adjust that. So you can change the your logo, the receipt details, so all of the information that's sort of compliant can be in here, but the actual thank you letter itself is adjusted down here. So let's jump in and edit it. You can kind of add a smart code if you like to really personalize it. So perhaps you would like to say dear first name, or if you want to get really fancy, you can say dear smart name. And what this will do is it will Keela will automatically check the contact's profile for a preferred name. And if there isn't one there, then the system will choose first name. So it goes preferred name, first name. And if there isn't one there at all, it'll choose full name. So this is a good option if you know that all of the contacts that you're sending the letter to have a name populated on their profile. You can adjust it, add as much information as you like to here. You can use these kind of customization font tools to make it look pretty, chuck some images in there, some links, whatever you like. And you can choose to have the printed letter and the email letter, so the email, thank you email, to be the same, or you can choose to change it as well. So this will be the body of the email that you're sending, and if you want, you can have a different sort of paragraph or thank you here for the printed letter. It's up to you, but I'm going to put it as being the same and we'll save it. So that's where you can find that. The last thing I want to show you is if I jump into receipt groups and I take a look at Elsie's receipts from Monday. Remember, this was Fred Flintstone's. I want to show you the cumulative receipt that we produce. So if you chose for a cumulative receipt to be produced per donor, which is when all of the donations are combined into one receipt, here's how it'll look here. So we'll load that up. Let's go to, oh, actually what I might do is download it so that you can see it a bit bigger. Here we go. So you'll have the date that the receipt was issued, the serial number, the location issued, so all of the information that we need for compliance, including these transaction IDs. So we do need to have these on the receipt so that we can keep track of them. It helps with our internal processes and make sure that we're compliant. Now, the date received will be the year that the donations were received. We just combine it to be the year to help keep this short and concise. Of course, if you're issuing donations from last year, this will say 2020, and the total amount of gift as well. So that's the total amount that your donor can perhaps claim. And here's what it'll look like. The last thing I wanted to talk about was just some resources. So where you can go if you have any questions. And of course, the answer is always going to be the knowledge base. So you can access it from anywhere in Keela just by clicking on this little question mark icon and just navigating to the knowledge base from there. You can always find the latest training videos for items throughout Keela in the training videos section here. So if you're not sure what you're looking for, you can always jump in here and review the training videos that we've got available that are sort of standalone, and you can access them in here. One that I recommend everyone check out is this how to use filters training video here. I touched on filters in this training session, but I think everyone can sort of benefit from checking out all the different ways that you can use filters, whether it's for segments, in fundraising, or in reports. They all work the same. So this can be a really great way for you to gather the knowledge on how to use filters, and then you can start making your own combinations up. If I jump back to the knowledge base here, you can also check out our filters article, which is here. We've got sort of how to use filters article here, but also we've got a sort of compilation of frequently requested filters. So if you're looking for contact reports or fundraising or any kind of donation reports, you can always jump in here and check out what other folks have asked us in the past. And we try to update these with those. So you can sort of look, we've got contacts who donated within a certain time period, but not another. You can see the filters that you need to select for that. They're all sort of listed in here. So it'll show you what you need to search for and how you can adjust them to get what you're after. Jump back up and we'll head back in here. So the next thing is the end of year and receipting section that we have in Keela. So in here you'll see lots of different articles that we've created, with some with training videos as well, on how you can set up your end of year reporting, or create fundraising reports, or calculate KPIs within Keela, which can be a really cool thing to check out. You can jump in here and you can see sort of all the different ways that you can use Keela for your reporting and to set targets for the year ahead. And of course, we've got our receipting tool section here. So if you're not sure sort of what receipts you need to produce or when, I recommend starting with our creating and sending receipts from Keela section here, because we've got all the different ways that you can send receipts and an example of sort of what scenario you would use that for. So create a single receipt or multiple receipts for one donor at a time. Cumulative receipts if you've got a Keela donation form set up. And then, of course, the bulk outstanding receipts, the one we're looking at today. So this article will be updated once I finish this training video. And of course, if you ever have any questions that aren't covered in here, you can always contact us at support. So you can submit a request up here, or you can do it through the Keela app, or you can just email us at support@keela.com. We're always happy to answer any questions. But we've got nearly every question we get via support, we try and create an article for in here. So you can always jump in and just search receipt and check out all the different articles that come up. We've got frequently asked questions, how to cancel and create receipts, things like that. All right, everyone, thanks for coming along. Enjoy the new tool.